Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.
Hello everybody and welcome to Future Hacker. I'm your host, Maria Taiji, and today we're talking to Annabelle Vultee. Annabelle is an EdTech executive, private equity and startup advisor. Having lived in the US, Europe, and Middle East and Asia, and working across industry including Coca-Cola, fractional ownership in aviation, and most recently, 10 years in education at EF Education First, covering the digital and hybrid English training business units for adults in China, Russia, Indonesia, and Spain. She also supports two ventures, Charlotte Gandolfo in the luxury resort wear space and Warm in the smart health space. In addition, Annabelle is advising private equity firms. Hey, Annabelle, it's so great to have you with us.
It's fantastic to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, Annabelle, we've been covering a lot about the future of education, as we can't possibly talk about innovation in any field without getting into this topic. You have a long experience in working in this sector, and specifically for something that we haven't covered yet, which is learning another language. I just love this subject. So could you please tell us what has changed in this industry during the last decade? As you have experience in so many different countries, are there any fundamental differences in culture when it comes to learning process?
Yeah, it's a good question and one I've gotten a few times. So let me take you through the trajectory of the language learning process over the last 10 to 12 years. So about 12 to 15 years ago, this industry was really a brick and mortar, people sitting in a classroom in front of a teacher industry. Then it sort of moved towards CD-ROMs and paper books to supplement that learning at home on their own. That was the first version of sort of hybrid learning in the classroom and at home. And that moved fairly quickly onto what we call modern day hybrid learning, which is both in-person learning with a teacher in a physical classroom and PC-based self-study online. That's really what we had for a good 7 or 8 years, from about 2010 till 2016, 17. And then there's been a shift, quite rapid shift, like everything in technology, towards digital learning, both online for self-study as well as live classes. So you got to study on your own, learn some grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary. Then you could actually take a class online from your PC. Then that moved, thanks to mostly from China actually, to mobile-based learning. So app-based classes with live classes and a live teacher, app-based bite-sized learning self-study. Then the prevalence of MOOCs actually took hold also in the language learning space with star teachers broadcasting lectures and lessons across whole countries. And this advent of anytime, anywhere learning, which is embedded with social community and gamification. That's really where we are today. And now we're kind of on the verge of something new, which is robot teachers and the advent of artificial intelligence and machine learning instead of live teachers altogether. That's sort of the cusp that we're on now. But I would say maybe the biggest shift over this time has been this transition from a business model standpoint, from paid self-study content where you study on your own, which is now free and commoditized basically worldwide, to paying for live classes, games, or AI-based learning. So that's sort of the trajectory of the industry. And I think it's a good question also related to different countries, because I do believe there are quite some differences. Recently, I've been working with China, Russia, Indonesia, and Spain. So I'll take a couple of examples there. Some of the differences between the speed of adoption of technology, the true need of learning, and how high the hurdle is to learn English has quite a difference in the types of English language training for adults that are provided in the market. So in China, for example, China's really at the forefront of all things digital and mobile. I happened to live there from 2013 to 2020, a time which when I got there, WeChat was not that big yet. And now it is everything. It is everyone's life. I mean, even people on the street who are homeless ask to be paid with WeChat. It's really in everyone's pocket. And Chinese young professionals, they spend a lot of time commuting. Really, an hour, hour and a half each way is not a big deal. So they use that time to do a lot of different things. They use that time to catch up with friends on social media. They use that time to watch shows and TV, and they use that time to study. Also in China, more than half of our incoming students are true beginners at the lowest level of the CEFR stages. That means their needs are quite different. They need a lot of time even learning the Roman alphabet. So reading anything in English is a barrier from day one. So what content you put out there and how you train people who come from a base of Chinese, for example, as opposed to Indonesians or Spaniards is quite different. In Indonesia and Spain, given that both of them employ the Roman alphabet and have much more daily exposure to English, the starting levels are much higher, mobile engagement is actually much lower, surprisingly, in these countries, and in-person interactions are much more valued as social experiences. So in Indonesia, where malls tend to be the places people gather, an English center can serve as a great alternative to meet like-minded people. So what purpose English serves in different countries is quite different. The method and mode of actual technology they use to learn is different. Affordability is different and starting point is different. So of course, how we teach and what we teach is a little bit different in those different countries.
That was such a perfect background. Thank you so much, Annabelle. A lot of new information, a lot of great insights. Every time we talk about the future of education, there's this discussion regarding how the format of learning is changing. You actually just mentioned how you teach changes per culture, right? And not only that, but the tools has been changing as well. And how the new generation is also absorbing the word and institutions need to adapt to that. As Fred Swaniker said, pick a problem you want to solve and build your learning around that. I really like that phrase. He's adding a new component, which is purpose. Do you see language learning heading the same path? Language is actually a great example of lifelong learning. We all know how we forget it without constant practice. Shouldn't it maybe be turned into a subscription-based model like a Netflix of education? Shouldn't this be more applied to this sector maybe?
Oh, this is something we talk about a lot in the education industry. The term Netflix for learning is really quite a popular term in our industry at this moment. So I think it's a good question. To me, if I sort of broke down what I think this Netflix model is or what the concept is, there are three pieces that come to my mind, and I can relate each piece of them to education and what my thoughts are there. The first one is this idea of a lower price and more access or more breadth of access through volume of the same library of content, right? That's what Netflix really is. It's low interactivity model of watching something. Lectures, for example, in English training, or bite-sized learning in self-study format, mostly in mobile, is already available in China in several markets already. So I expect this will continue, this sort of library of content you can pick and choose from. And there's also a lot of capital in private equity and venture capital out there for this type of EdTech. But this business model has not really been sticky yet, and it's fraught with a lot of different challenges so far. The second piece is for this Netflix of learning model. And what Netflix does is it uses sophisticated artificial intelligence to serve you the content that you personally are most likely to engage with. It's this personalization of what you're interested in. And when it comes to learning a language, the quote unquote entertainment factor simply isn't as engaging at this time. It's not as fun to learn a language through this subscription of content model as it is to binge watch TV. I mean, I've been in this binge watching mode of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Don't ask me why. That makes me sound incredibly unsophisticated, but I can't help it. It's there and I can watch it back to back. There isn't the same sense when it comes to language learning. I hope there will be down the road. But there are many seeds of collaboration between education and entertainment. So I think that's a good starting point. I was lucky enough to be on a panel last year at Slush Shanghai with Peter Westerbacka, who is one of the founders of Rovio, which made Angry Birds. And we spent a lot of time on the panel talking about the convergence of entertainment and gaming and entertainment and education to make the process more fun. I think down the road, maybe we can get a little bit more of this artificial intelligence serving you English training content through subscription that's fun, but I'm not sure we're quite there yet. I wish I could say we are, but we're not. And then the third aspect of this sort of Netflix for learning is simply the model of payment through subscription instead of paying up for a fixed amount of learning, classes, or content. This is not, unfortunately, a model that's proven to be very profitable in our industry yet, but I expect that we will get there. It is a stumbling block, though. If companies can't figure out how to monetize and make these things profitable, it is going to be a stumbling block for innovation. So let's see if some brilliant person can crack the code on this. That will be a big change in and of itself.
Great answer, Annabelle. Thank you so much. Talking about the use of new technologies, we now have all those apps offering immersive experiences using 3D, virtual reality, and augmented reality. Can you walk us through the adoption and use cases of those technologies to language learning? And which other advancements do you see for this industry? You actually already mentioned robot teachers, you mentioned personalization, you mentioned gamification, but regarding the use of those technologies to those ends as well, does it really help people reaching fluency? Or do you see it as a more of an engaging way to this generation that is used to this type of interactivity?
I think virtual and augmented reality tools are actually really exciting and absolutely can play a role in the future of all types of learning, not only language learning, but all types of learning. EF has been dabbling in this space for a few years, actually, in various different forms, and we've come up with some amazing demos. Unfortunately, not many of them have left the door. From a development standpoint, from the software development standpoint, though, we've seen that there isn't much expertise yet in this space. And from a market standpoint, I think one of the biggest challenges for augmented reality and virtual reality is that the adoption of the required hardware devices is not yet mainstream the way mobile phones are. They're still too expensive. There are only a few companies that really make these goggles, visors, and various different ways to really engage in these augmented and virtual reality scenarios. And then coupling that with finding these, incredible software developers and people that can build content into this experience. This is really new to the world. And there just isn't enough expertise or experience in this, and not enough adoption of these currently very expensive hardware. So it's not a mainstream thing. And if it's not mainstream, it's really not going to be on the forefront of where EdTech is going to be going in the short term. So I would say it's sort of a mixed bag. I think it has lots of opportunities, but we're not there yet. In terms of the efficacy, does it work? Would this help people get to fluency? I think it remains to be seen a bit, but what I do know, and what we know from a lot of experience at EF especially, is that immersive learning in real life absolutely has a critical impact on learning and much more impact on getting to fluency. So in that way, I'm really optimistic about digitally immersive experiences. It may even help to lower the barrier for people's natural instinct to be insecure practicing a language they don't know. When we're sitting face to face with someone, we're really nervous to practice something we know we're going to mess up. But it might be kind of different if you're interacting with something that's more virtual or not even a live person, but live sort of active scenarios. So if a student can interact with something that's more anonymous, an anonymous avatar or character, we may actually see the application of the language more, people actually practicing more, which will absolutely significantly speed the learning process and achieve fluency much faster. It's also a relevant tool to younger generations. You asked about, is this just an exciting thing for younger people? I mean, I think it is. And I think younger generations are going to be the people who are going to be the developers and figure out how to make these things work. I don't think it's going to be my 44-year-old peers or anyone older than me. I absolutely could be wrong, but I think it is going to be the younger generations that are going to figure out how to use this technology. And I would also say in this bizarre year of 2020 with COVID, people are more and more open to creative ways to explore the world and cultures. So this has even more relevance today than ever, I would say. We just need affordable and accessible devices and a lot more developers and creatives to hire to build these great experiences. So I think we'll get there, but we're not there today, unfortunately.
What I liked about it when I was researching was that those immersive technologies, it makes sense because you're actually putting the person literally like inside the situation. Like they have those situations that the person's inside the train or in the airport or in another country. It's so different than sitting there reading a book, staying within the classroom, talking to the teacher. So maybe this could help, as you mentioned, this block that someone may have when talking to the teacher by being inside the situation. You just mentioned that the big blocker to that is the lack of resources and the lack of experience. We're truly not there today. I think today we're more analyzing what's out there. People are testing those technologies still. But if you could guess, and of course this is a guess, right? This is Future Hacker. We're just playing ideas around the futures based on your experience. How far do you think we are from getting there, from actually having those amazing immersive experiences, or maybe even dealing with robots for language learning? How far are we from there? How many decades you would guess?
We're not decades away. Technology moves so quickly. There's so many people right now who are moving into the space of software development and technology. There's so much funding and capital for it. So we're not decades away. We're not even 10 years away from any of these. There's already robot learning available now. It's maybe not the experience people would hope it would be yet. And there is augmented and virtual reality for all kinds of learning today, but it might not also be from sort of A to Z when it comes to learning a language or really engaging enough or accessible enough. I think if the hardware itself becomes more accessible, if you even need hardware that's outside of your mobile phone, for example, if augmented and virtual reality like Pokemon Go was on the device you already own, this would move significantly faster. It's if you have to buy a $350 device, that's a barrier, I think, to adoption and to making something mainstream. But in terms of the technology and products being available, I think we're 5 to 7 years away. I don't even think it's decades. We're getting pretty close. It's just there needs to be a focus on it. There needs to be enough talent focused and interested in it. And the devices that people use need to be prevalent in a lot of people's hands.
I just love your answer. It's great to know that you're not that far. Definitely, there's a whole generation now that is yearning for this type of advancements. Annabelle, thank you so much. This is the end of the first episode. We're going to keep talking about the evolution of language learning and new technologies on the second episode. Just stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back.
Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.